Hey team, this is Grant David Collins and welcome to Basement Philanthropy, a place for people who do not want to wait until they're rich or retired to create meaning, impact, and connection with their time, talents, and money, regardless of the amount. On this episode, we're going to be talking about how invitations are a huge multiplier to our personal giving. So let's get started. Man, I feel like it has been a long time since we have sat down at this desk in my basement and just had a simple conversation about giving. We've been doing a lot of things on this end, and so for the last couple of weeks, we've kind of mixed things up. But it is good to be back at the desk talking to you, and I'm just excited to be here. So thanks for tuning in. This last week, we had an event within our giving community called Floats and Philanthropy. I know I'm a huge fan of alliteration, so you're going to see it all over the place. Anyway, we'll talk more about the event towards the end of the podcast. But a few hours before it started, I sent out a text message to the people who had told us that they were coming. And the message said this. Hey, person's first name. Pumped to be with you tonight. One of the easiest ways to make an impact is by inviting someone else to get involved. Consider bringing a friend. Everyone is welcome. Invitations, although they are simple, are really overlooked in my opinion. But their potential power really is the basis of what gives me a lot of hope in our world that is filled with a ton of inequality. You see, when I look at some of the big, crazy challenges that we are facing as a world, war, hunger, natural and human-made disasters, I don't see them the same way as I used to. And that really is because of the power of invitations. And what I mean by this is before I saw these big challenges as towering Godzilla-like concepts, there was very little hope for me to have any sort of meaningful impact in this fight. And that's because I was looking at it from a very singular perspective. Me versus Godzilla is not a very fair fight in any way, shape, or form. Before I discovered this multiplying power of invitations, I was fairly blind to the people around me. And it's no wonder that so many of us, myself included, are so hesitant to make the first move in opposition to these larger than life challenges. We feel alone because in some ways we've kind of boxed ourselves off to the people around us. You stay in your lane, I'll stay in mine. And because of this, we kind of put on blinders. And those blinders make it pretty terrifying to take on these challenges. I mean, can you imagine what it would be like to have Godzilla single you out in a crowd? That is definitely a position that I do not want to be in. But once I started to look around, I had this really interesting experience. And as Amber and I were working through this podcast, she brought up the scene in the 6th Harry Potter when Dumbledore has just died. And hopefully I didn't just ruin that movie for you, but it has been 14 years since it came out. So I feel like if this is the first time you're hearing about it, like, sorry, not sorry, I guess. But anyway, Dumbledore has just died. And the dark mark is looming above Hogwarts. And in this chaos, the camera kind of pans in on Professor McGonagall. And she points her singular wand to the sky. And there's this little light that comes out of the wand. And it's kind of cute in this sea of darkness. But what happens is that this silent invitation that Professor McGonagall puts out there, and her example creates this ripple effect. And soon all the students have followed suit, and this mass of students that are pointing their wands at the sky turns away this darkness. And it's honestly because they started to see each other around them as people of power against these forces that felt so big and dark and scary at this time. And I have often felt like one of those students in that crowd. And it's this power of invitations and working together that turns these fantasy-like Harry Potter experiences into reality in the world around us. Throughout our history, there are so many examples of people taking a stand and inviting people to get involved in the world moving. Examples like Gandhi, who was just one person, but invited others to get involved with his nonviolent protests that eventually led to the freedom of India from British colonization. Another example of this is Martin Luther King Jr., who was a simple minister that turned the fight for civil rights in America from a dream into reality. But although these examples are from our history and we can relate to them more than we can maybe a fantasy novel, sometimes these larger-than-life characters can not really land for everyday individuals like you and me. Gandhi or Martin Luther King can feel kind of like Superman facing off against Godzilla, which is a little bit more of a fair fight. So instead of focusing on the stories from these leaders, let me tell you a story of someone who is a little less known within the civil rights movement, but whose actions paired with thousands of other people just like him were no less important to the eventual outcome of the civil rights movement. After hearing from and being inspired by Martin Luther King Jr., Purcell Conway and a few of his friends decided to engage in a demonstration on St. Augustine's Beach, which at the time was segregated. After no more than about 5 minutes of being in the water, Purcell and his friends saw a large group gathering to intervene in their demonstration. They ended up being mugged by this crowd, which caused their local civil rights leaders to organize a large-scale demonstration at this same beach in response. And the Florida State Troopers were called in to protect the demonstrators. And after some fierce altercations and fights within the people who were antagonistic to the beach protest, the demonstrators were allowed to swim. Now, Purcell and his friends likely didn't have any understanding of how big of an impact their decisions would have, but this simple following of an invitation to get involved in the movement and in demonstrating in a non-violent way really started to change or really had a big impact on the movement as a whole. So I want to stop for just a second and check in and see how you're experiencing this concept of invitations leading to impact. Are you starting to see yourself and your personal response and personal ability to extend invitations as being impactful or as being a multiplier in this space? Or is it still feeling a little bit too far from home? I mean, while we don't really know Purcell's name, his actions are incredibly courageous. And sometimes even these types of stories can feel unreachable. Maybe not a Superman, but like a Robin to a Batman type of story. So let me frame up another story that just happened around the event that I was talking about earlier in this podcast. A few months ago, I invited a couple friends over to my house to brainstorm some giving opportunities that we could be involved with over the summer. And one of my friends, Kurt, gave the suggestion that we should look into partnering with a local nonprofit called Sleep in Heavenly Peace. Now, this nonprofit provides beds for children in the community who do not have access to one for one reason or another. And so a few weeks later, after this brainstorm, I personally got involved with volunteering with the group, and I built a couple beds and had just a fantastic experience. Now, this experience led to our team partnering with Sleep in Heavenly Peace to put on a fundraiser and to build beds in our own build day. Now, the kickoff to this project was the Floats and Philanthropy event that I talked about earlier. And over 60 people showed up to that event. And we anticipate even more coming out to the actual project that is happening in a couple weeks on August 12th. Now, I hope that this story with Kurt and myself and our team maybe touches a little bit closer to home. You know, Kurt gave this simple suggestion in a brainstorm, and a couple weeks later, like, kids in our local community will have beds to sleep on for maybe the first time because of it. And I know that it is easy to feel small in this world where Godzilla seems to be everywhere. But what I want you to know is that by accepting or extending invitations of your own, you can have a massive impact on the world around you. So maybe let's start to transition from this high-level mindset into more of a practical application of what we've been talking about. The first thing that I would say or extend is an invitation to get involved with this project that we are doing on the 12th. Regardless if you live close to where our community is creating an impact, you can have an impact by helping us through donations. There is a link that is posted in the description that will take you to a GoFundMe page where you can contribute a little bit of money and then see what that impact is on the community by helping us fund a project that we are getting involved with and really excited about. But it doesn't have to stop with just a simple donation interaction. Just like I said in the text message earlier, one of the biggest ways to create impact is to invite someone else to get involved in whatever good you are creating. So the next time you are cooking a meal for a friend or doing some yard work for your parents or someone you know, or volunteering with a local nonprofit, invite someone to come with you. Not only will this automatically double your potential impact, but it will create an exponential ripple effect that in some way, shape, or form really does have the ability to take on Godzilla-esque challenges that we are facing in this world. I believe in your ability to give, and we really do need your help, not only with the bed project, but also just in general with the giving world that we are wanting to create more of. Well, team, that's it for me. Let's go out in the world and create good with our time, talents, and money, regardless of the amount, and add a multiplier effect to that through invitations together. Talk soon.